Imagine waking up tomorrow with absolute certainty that no matter what challenges appear before you, they will ultimately serve your highest good. Picture moving through your day with the unshakable confidence that every closed door leads to an open window, every rejection points you toward your true acceptance, every setback is the setup for your most extraordinary comeback. This isn't blind optimism or naive wishful thinking. It's a deliberate mental strategy that has transformed countless lives throughout history. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're exploring a philosophy so powerful that it has the potential to completely revolutionize your experience of life. Act as if everything always works out for you isn't just a catchy phrase. It's a radical reframing that changes how your brain processes reality, how your body responds to stress, and ultimately, how your life unfolds. I'm not suggesting you ignore problems or pretend difficulties don't exist. Rather, I'm inviting you to adopt the mindset of history's greatest achievers who understood that our interpretations of events, not the events themselves, determine our outcomes. This perspective is available to every single one of us, regardless of our current circumstances. As we explore the 5 key principles behind this transformative mindset today, I challenge you to apply them immediately. Don't just listen passively. Engage actively. Because by the end of our time together, you'll understand why acting as if everything works out for you isn't just positive thinking. It's the most practical approach to creating the life you truly desire. Our minds are meaning-making machines, constantly interpreting the world around us. When something happens, we immediately assign meaning to it. Is this good or bad? Helpful or harmful? An opportunity or obstacle? What most people fail to realize is that these interpretations aren't objective reality, they're choices. And these choices form the foundation upon which our experiences are built. The ancient Stoics understood this profoundly. Epictetus taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you respond that matters." Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "The universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it." These weren't just philosophical musings, they were practical insights into the mechanics of human experience. Modern neuroscience confirms what these philosophers intuited. Our brains are incredibly plastic, forming neural pathways based on repeated thoughts and interpretations. When you habitually frame events as working out for you, you literally rewire your brain to scan for evidence that supports this belief. You begin noticing opportunities where others see only obstacles. Consider how different your experience would be if you interpreted every event through the lens of, "This is happening for me, not to me." The difficult conversation with your partner becomes an opportunity for deeper connection. The project failure at work becomes the feedback needed for your greatest innovation. The health challenge becomes the wake-up call that transforms your well-being. This mental framing doesn't require denial of difficulty or suppression of emotion. You can acknowledge pain, disappointment, or frustration while still maintaining the meta-perspective that ultimately, this experience is serving your growth in ways you may not yet comprehend. As Viktor Frankl discovered in the concentration camps, the last of human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. When you consciously choose to frame life as working out for you, you activate what psychologists call selective attention. Your brain begins filtering the vast amount of information it receives to highlight evidence that confirms your expectation. This isn't self-deception, it's strategic utilization of how your mind naturally operates. The frame you choose doesn't just interpret your reality, it helps create it. At the core of acting as if everything works out for you is an unshakable internal resilience that transcends circumstantial evidence. This isn't about denying reality. It's about recognizing that most of what we consider reality is actually interpretation, and choosing an interpretation that empowers rather than diminishes us. Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." When you operate from the belief that everything works out for you, you establish the most powerful why possible. A fundamental trust in life itself. This trust becomes your anchor during storms, your compass when lost, your reservoir of strength when challenges arise. Consider the Japanese concept of kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold, creating something more valuable and beautiful than the original. This practice embodies the philosophy that breakage and repair are part of an object's history, not something to disguise. When you act as if everything works out for you, you become the master craftsman of your experience, pouring gold into the inevitable cracks that appear in life. This resilience isn't passive acceptance. It's active engagement with life from a position of trust rather than fear. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that things are difficult." When you believe that everything works out for you, you dare more consistently, confront challenges more directly, and recover from setbacks more quickly. The most resilient people throughout history weren't those who avoided difficulty, but those who reframed it. Nelson Mandela transformed 27 years of imprisonment into preparation for leadership. Helen Keller converted blindness and deafness into a platform for global inspiration. Stephen Hawking transmuted physical limitation into intellectual liberation. What separated these individuals wasn't their circumstances, but their interpretation of those circumstances, their unshakable belief that somehow these challenges were working out for them. This form of resilience becomes self-reinforcing. Each time you navigate a challenge from this perspective, you strengthen the neural pathways associated with this belief. Over time, what begins as a conscious choice becomes an unconscious assumption, a default way of approaching life that serves as your psychological immune system, protecting you not from difficulty itself, but from the debilitating effects of interpreting difficulty as meaningless suffering. What we expect shapes what we experience, not through mystical forces, but through concrete psychological and behavioral mechanisms that are well documented in scientific literature. When you act as if everything works out for you, you set in motion a cascade of subtle adjustments that dramatically increase the likelihood of positive outcomes. Robert Rosenthal's landmark Pygmalion in the Classroom study demonstrated how teacher expectations significantly influenced student performance, not through any supernatural means, but through micro-behaviors: more encouraging feedback, more challenging material, more positive nonverbal cues. Similarly, when you expect positive outcomes, you unconsciously adjust your behavior in ways that make those outcomes more likely. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus observed, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." When you operate from the belief that everything works out for you, you naturally maximize what's in your power. You take more initiative, persist longer, recover faster from setbacks, and remain more alert to unexpected opportunities. These behavioral shifts aren't insignificant. They fundamentally alter your trajectory. This isn't magical thinking. It's strategic application of psychological principles. Consider the placebo effect, where belief in treatment efficacy produces measurable physiological improvements even without active medical ingredients. This isn't imagination. It's your body responding to your mind's expectations with real neurochemical and immunological changes. Your belief that things will work out creates physiological conditions that support better decision-making, clearer thinking, and healthier responses to stress. In relationships, this expectation transforms how you communicate. Instead of approaching difficult conversations defensively, expecting conflict, you enter with curiosity and openness, expecting resolution. The subtle shifts in your tone, body language, and word choice dramatically impact how others respond to you. As Epictetus noted, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Your expectation of positive outcomes changes how you react, which changes what happens next. Perhaps most importantly, this perspective transforms how you interpret feedback. When you believe everything works out for you, rejection becomes redirection, criticism becomes refinement, and obstacles become opportunities for innovation. This interpretive framework doesn't just comfort you after disappointment, it actively guides you toward more effective approaches. You become less attached to specific outcomes and more committed to the evolutionary process that leads to optimal results. Life's greatest challenges often conceal its most significant opportunities. When you act as if everything works out for you, you develop an almost supernatural ability to extract value from adversity, to find the hidden benefit, the unexpected opening, the disguised blessing within apparent misfortune. The Stoics called this concept amor fati, the love of fate. Friedrich Nietzsche expanded on this, writing, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, but love it." This isn't resignation, it's radical acceptance combined with determined action. It's the recognition that resistance to what is creates suffering, while acceptance creates possibility. Consider how often history's greatest breakthroughs emerged from apparent disaster. Alexander Fleming's laboratory contamination led to the discovery of penicillin. Thomas Edison's thousands of failures provided the necessary information to create the light bulb. Steve Jobs' painful ouster from Apple gave him the perspective needed to return and transform it into one of the world's most valuable companies. Each of these individuals approached adversity as if it would ultimately work out for them, and this perspective transformed setback into setup. This approach doesn't minimize difficulty or bypass emotions. The pain of loss, disappointment, or failure is real and deserves acknowledgement. But when you operate from the belief that everything works out for you, you don't camp in that emotional reality. You move through it, asking empowering questions. What can I learn from this? How might this be serving me? What doors might be opening because this one closed? Marcus Aurelius advised, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." When you view obstacles through this lens, they transform from barriers into bridges, from roadblocks into roadmaps. This isn't positive thinking for its own sake. It's strategic reframing that reveals genuine opportunities within apparent adversity. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of this perspective is how it liberates you from the tyranny of appearances. Most people judge experiences prematurely, labeling them as good or bad before their full implications unfold. When you act as if everything works out for you, you suspend judgment, remaining open to the possibility that today's disappointment may be the necessary precursor to tomorrow's breakthrough. This patience and perspective allow you to see connections and possibilities that others miss. Belief without action is merely wishful thinking. The philosophy of acting as if everything works out for you achieves its full power when it becomes the foundation for decisive, courageous action. This mindset doesn't just change how you think, it transforms how you move through the world. Seneca observed, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that things are difficult." When you operate from the belief that everything works out for you, fear loses its grip. Rejection becomes less threatening when you view it as redirection. Failure becomes less daunting when you see it as feedback. Uncertainty becomes less paralyzing when you trust in your ability to navigate whatever emerges. This psychological safety creates the conditions for what psychologists call approach motivation, rather than avoidance motivation. Instead of acting primarily to avoid pain, loss, or failure, you act to pursue growth, contribution, and meaningful achievement. This fundamental shift in motivation dramatically increases both your effectiveness and your fulfillment. Consider how differently you approach opportunities when you believe they'll work out for you. You speak up in meetings with confidence rather than remaining silent with doubt. You pursue the relationship that interests you rather than protecting yourself from potential rejection. You launch the business you've been contemplating rather than clinging to the security of what's familiar but unfulfilling. Each action builds momentum, creating a virtuous cycle of boldness and growth. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." When you act as if everything works out for you, you approach the future not with anxiety but anticipation. This doesn't mean you ignore prudent planning or risk management. It means you engage with these activities from a place of centered confidence rather than fearful hypervigilance. Perhaps most importantly, this approach allows you to act with greater authenticity. Most people make decisions based primarily on what they believe will protect them from pain or secure external validation. When you trust that everything works out for you, You're freed to make choices aligned with your deepest values and authentic desires. You pursue what truly matters rather than what merely seems safe. This bold action isn't reckless, it's responsible risk-taking informed by both careful consideration and fundamental trust. As Aristotle taught, courage isn't the absence of fear, but action in the presence of fear. When you act as if everything works out for you, you acknowledge your fears while refusing to be governed by them. You move forward not because success is guaranteed, but because growth is inevitable. The philosophy we've explored today, acting as if everything always works out for you, isn't a technique for avoiding life's challenges. It's a framework for transforming how you experience them. It doesn't change what happens to you, it changes what you do with what happens. And ultimately, that makes all the difference. We've seen how mental framing shapes your perception of reality, how resilient belief creates psychological stability amid uncertainty, how expectations influence outcomes through self-fulfilling prophecies, how adversity conceals opportunity for those willing to seek it, and how this mindset empowers bold, authentic action. This perspective isn't naive optimism or magical thinking. It's a sophisticated psychological approach grounded in both ancient wisdom and modern science. The Stoics understood it as amor fati, the love of fate. Psychologists understand it as cognitive reframing and selective attention. Neuroscientists understand it as neuroplasticity and embodied cognition. From every angle, this approach represents not an escape from reality but a more complete engagement with it. As you leave today, I challenge you to experiment with this mindset not as a philosophical concept but as a lived practice. When facing uncertainty, act as if it will work out for you. When encountering obstacles, act as if they contain hidden opportunities. When experiencing disappointment, act as if it's redirecting you towards something better. Start small. Apply this perspective to minor challenges before tackling life's biggest questions. Notice how it changes not just your thinking but your actions, your relationships, your results. Give this approach the chance to prove itself in your life, just as it has in countless lives throughout history. Remember that this isn't about denying difficulty or suppressing emotion. It's about adding a meta-perspective that transforms how you relate to your experiences. You can acknowledge pain, disappointment, or frustration while still maintaining the overarching belief that somehow, in ways you may not yet understand, this experience is working out for you. Thank you for your attention and engagement today. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share these ideas with you, and I'm excited to see how they manifest in your life. Remember, the most powerful force shaping your future isn't circumstance, but the meaning you assign to it. Choose wisely, act boldly, and watch as everything, yes, everything, works out for you in ways more extraordinary than you can currently imagine.